Is the YouTube on, Joe?
Let me double check. It's actually it's still connecting. Give it a sec.
I won't start just yet. Then I'll let it have a catch up.
Refresh. There we go. Yeah.
Are we up? Wonderful. Okay, cool. So, hello everyone. So this week, what we're going to actually start doing, as I'm sure you saw my announcement earlier, is we're actually going to be starting the process of programming our own games using GameFruit again. But we're going to be building our own script. So last week we were using a lot of the kind of like pre-programmed scripts that GameFruit had. So what we're going to do this week is we're actually going to start the process of building those scripts ourselves. So if you haven't already, navigate over to make.gamefruit.com. The link should be up in the chat somewhere, and then you should be able to see the home screen. So I'll let everybody have a catch up doing that, and then we'll go through the setup process just after that then. Okay, so once you've navigated over to the home screen, first thing you need to do is click on Start Making, and then you'll get taken to kind of like the menu screen. If I'm going too fast, so if there's anything you want to ask, just pop onto the voice channel or put a message up in the chat, and then we'll be able to answer any questions that you've got. Okay. So once you've navigated through to this home screen, click on Starter Platform Game, and then that should load up like a template for you. You'll maybe have to give it a few seconds because it sometimes can be a little bit slow. It shouldn't take too long. And when it does eventually load up, what you'll see is that there are actually two separate levels. Just close these windows down. You'll see that there are two levels already in place. There's a number 1 and a number 2. You'll see them on the top along the bar here. I'll click between them so that you can see what I mean. They're along the top bar here, along one of the menu bars. What you need to do to start off with is you just need to click on the little plus symbol just here, and it will add an extra level. So you should have a total of 3 bars going along the top, 3 levels, going along the top of your screen, okay? And what I need you to do to start off with is just delete the other 2 levels, because we don't need those, because they're levels that contain a lot of like pre-scripted stuff, and we want to be building our own things. So if you right click on them, just remove those levels so that you're just left with the blank level that we've just made, okay? Sorry. So I'll let everyone have a catch up on that. If you're stuck on anything, just put it in the chat, and we'll be able to help you sort of like best we can. It should be fine. So just make sure you've got this one blank level. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to add a new pack. Okay, so what these packs are, you'll probably see them. If you look on the left of the screen, there's actually a section, and it's called, you'll see 3 little tabs. One's called Media, one's called Code, and one's called Levels. So we're going to focus to begin with, like last week, on this Media tab. Okay. And what we're going to need to do is we're actually going to need to add a new pack, because there's a special pack that Gamefruit have developed to that lets you essentially pre-program your games. Okay, so instead of using so at the moment you'll probably see that they've got a pack here which has got all of their pre-scripted assets in. What we need to do is we actually need to add a pack that hasn't got all of those pre-scripted assets associated with them, so that we can build them ourselves. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to click on this big button here called Explore Marketplace, and we're going to scroll down through that list until we see a pack called, you'll see it eventually, it's a little bit further ways down, it's got this name, Ngatakaro. If you click on that and then click on the Get It for Free button just down in the bottom right of the screen, that will then download that pack for you. Okay, so that pack will then be associated with your Gamefruit. So if you close the other pack, so by clicking on it, you'll see now that in that menu on the left, you've got that new pack that you've just downloaded waiting for you. Okay, so I know there's going to probably be a little bit of a lag on the live stream, so I'll let it catch up and then we'll carry on from there. Okay. Like I said, if you've got any questions or if I'm going too fast, just let us know in Discord and I'll slow it down for you, okay? Okay, is everyone ready to carry on? If you're not, just put something up in the chat and I'll wait a little bit longer for you. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to add some new layers. Okay, so last week, if you were in the session last week, what we did was we began by adding some new layers to the to our game. Okay, so the layers, they kind of represent different sections of the game. Okay, so you'll need a layer for things like your characters, you'll need a layer for your background images, you'll need a layer for things like your heads-up display, okay, your HUD, for different objects in the game. So basically you need to have layers for pretty much most things that you put into your game, okay? So what we're going to do to start off with is up on the right of the screen here, you'll see a layers box. What we need to do is we need to start by adding in a few layers to our game, okay? So if you were in last week's stream, you'll remember that there are two different types of layers. So you've got just a normal new layer, and you've also got a new tile map, okay? So the new tile map is sort of like, it allows for a more precise placement of the different objects in the game. So what we're going to use it for is for our floor map. So if you click on new tile map, you'll see that you get like a grid, and that grid is what's going to allow us to place things like our floor into the game, okay? It's really important that you rename your layers. So like in real programming, when, sort of in like more, advanced programming, like things like Python and things like that, we have the tendency to comment our code. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to comment, in a way, our layers by renaming them so that we can remember what they do exactly. Okay, and you can do this as well in things like Scratch. So in Scratch programming, you've probably seen that you add comments to things. It's really important that you do that in programming because it can help to remember what a piece of code has done. So if we double click on it, I'm going to call this one floor. Okay, and what that means is that that layer is going to be where my floor where my floor is going to go. I'm also going to add another new layer, and I'm going to call it character, so that I've got a character layer. And I'm going to add another new layer, which is I'm just going to call mine objects, okay? And this is going to be where things like my obstacles go. In later versions of the game, it'll be where things like my collectibles go, okay? So we're going to actually add, I'm going to add 4 layers all together, okay? So I'll let you get your layers all added in. And then we'll carry on from there, okay? So I'll give you a little while just to get your layers added and renamed and things like that, and then we'll carry on from there. Like I said, if you need any help with anything, Andrew and Joe are also online as well. So they'll be kind of keeping an eye on the chat and things, so that if you do need any help with anything, just pop it up in the chat, pop a screenshot up in the chat of if something isn't working or if you're not sure of something, and we'll all be able to kind of help you as best as we can. Yeah, that is that is something that we're going to look at sort of later on. So those are characters that you could actually, if you wanted to, Rhys, you can actually have that as one of your playable characters. If you do look in the menu on the left under that media tab, there are actually players. So there are characters and there are players. So what we're going to be doing today is, in a second, we're going to be programming one of the players to move. But in sessions, sort of in the future, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at adding characters like that into the game, because in future sessions, we're going to hopefully be looking at things like NPCs and how to program NPCs. So that's something that we're going to look at later on. But if you wanted to, I suppose you could try programming one of those characters. Absolutely. But we'll go through that in a little while. Okay. So once you've added in your layers, what I would like you to do now, just for a little while, just for a few minutes, is go to your floor layer on the screen so that you get that grid, that nice grid back up, and scroll through the menu on the left until you get to a section in that menu called it's called tiles. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do, just for a few minutes, is design a little bit of a walkway. Okay, so I'm going to choose this tile, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to design my own kind of little level, so that I've got just a place for my playable character to eventually walk on. Okay, so I'm just going to build up a little level. remember that you have got the toolbar on the left here, okay? So if you want to move around the level, you can use the 4 arrows, the 4 directional arrows, and you can click and drag to different parts of the level. So I'm just going to build up a little bit of a path, which is what my playable character is going to eventually walk on, okay? So if you do look in that menu on the left, you'll see that there's actually like a tracer map just underneath the tile section. If you want to, you can place that into the game, and it's kind of just like something that you can trace your floor over. But if you want to design your own level and have your own pathways like I've done, that's absolutely fine as well. But what I'll do, I'll give you a few minutes to kind of build up your own little level, and if you like, if you want to show us what work you've done, just post some screenshots into the Discord, and we'll have a quick look at what you've done. It'll be interesting to see what sort of levels you come up with. And so then once you've done that, what we'll do then is we'll move on to start programming our first playable character, okay? So post some screenshots, ask questions if you're stuck, and then we'll carry on in a second. So like just to let you all kind of know, the TechnoCamps, like this online TechnoClub that we're running at the moment, we're hopefully going to be running it every week now. So every Wednesday, between 4 and 6, we're going to be running this sort of TechnoClub. So obviously we'll put reminders up on things like social media and in Discord and stuff to remind you when sessions are going to be on. But our hope is that every week now, between 4 and 6, every Wednesday, we'll be hosting one of these sessions. So for the next few weeks, we're actually going to be looking at Game Fruit. So we're going to be focusing on Game Fruit and looking at things like adding new bits and pieces to your game so that you've got, like I said, the playable character. We're going to add things like the NPCs. Eventually, hopefully, we're going to be doing things like programming your own HUD and programming in movable obstacles and different things like that. So that's what the plan is for the next sort of few weeks, is we're just going to be hopefully covering different elements of Game Fruit and kind of building up on your own game. So it's quite important that at the end of this session, I'll take you through again the process of exporting your game so that you can save a copy of it to your PC, so that way next week all we'll need to do is import the game that you're designing this week back up onto Game Fruit, and then we can carry on editing it. So that's going to be what we're doing for the next few weeks. And like I said, we're hoping that these sessions are going to be running sort of every week now. We'll keep you posted on sort of every time we're going to be running one. Yeah, that's pretty nice, Alex. That's really cool. Looks really good. Okay, I'll give you just a couple more minutes just to carry on with that, and then we'll move on to actually programming our character. Remember, if you make a mistake or anything like that, the little there's like a little eraser in that toolbar on the left, which you can use to just delete parts of the level that you don't want or anything like that. Just make sure that after you've used the eraser, you click back on the mouse symbol so that it takes you back to being able to click on objects again, because otherwise you're going to end up accidentally deleting something that you didn't want to delete, which wouldn't be good. Okay, so hopefully you've managed to design your own sort of sets of levels. So at the end, you're welcome to kind of add to these levels, or even in your own time, you can add to them to your level design. You can add things, as you go. It's entirely up to you. This is going to be your game now for the next few weeks, so you're welcome to add things as you go. Okay, it's entirely up to you how you design your game. Okay, this is going to be for you to play about with. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to actually programming our playable character. Okay, so first thing you need to do is click on the character layer. Okay, Prius, yours have just come through. That looks really good. It's really, really good. Fantastic. Okay. So if you click on that character layer so that you get rid of that grid background, because if you try and place things into the floor layer that aren't sort of like that you don't intend to put in there, it's going to make them look really, really tiny, and they're not actually going to work. So if you click back onto your character layer again, okay, and then scroll down in that menu or scroll up in that menu on the left to the players section. Okay, first thing I want you to do is just choose one of those players. It doesn't matter which one, it's entirely up to you which one you choose. I'm going to choose this one, and I'm just going to place it at the start of my level. Okay, so it's entirely up to you which one you choose, but just click and drag one of them into the start of your level. So once you've done that, what we're then going to do is we're going to start programming it. Okay, so to start off with, you need to right click on your playable character, and you'll see a button in the menu called Add Script. Okay, if you click on Add Script, you'll get brought to this blank screen. Okay, so if you were in last week's session, you might have seen that we did something like this when we programmed our HUD. Okay, so this blank script is very, very similar to what you would see in Scratch. Okay, so there are loads, and you can even see that there are some Scratch blocks as well. Essentially, GameFruit uses a form of block-based programming, so it's very, very similar to how Scratch works. Okay, it's really, really similar to how Scratch works. It's just a series of blocks, and we're going to use those blocks to build to program our character. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to program the character, how to get the character to move using the right arrow key, and then I'm going to leave you to figure out what to do when the left arrow key is pressed and when the up arrow is pressed. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean. So the first thing that we're going to do for the right arrow, and remember, if I'm going too fast or if there's anything you don't understand, please put it up in the Discord so that we can take you through it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this events menu on the left. Okay, and I'm going to scroll down until I see a block called when backspace/delete is pressed. Okay, and I'm going to drag that into my script. So as you'd expect, this is going to be, whenever this button is pressed, our character is going to do something, okay? And what I'd like you to do is duplicate that. So right click on it and duplicate it so that you've got two of them all together. And then change the when \delete option to when right arrow is pressed. Okay, and I'd like you to do that for both of your of those blocks. Okay. Now, both of these blocks, they're going to represent. One is going to the one on the blocks on the left are going to represent when the right arrow is pressed, and the block on the right is going to be when the right arrow is released. Okay, because if we don't put a when the right arrow is released block in, what's going to happen is your character is just going to keep on doing exactly the same thing that it's programmed to do when the right arrow is pressed, because there's nothing to tell the script what to do when the button is actually let go of when it's released. So we're going to need two sets of blocks. We're going to need the when right arrow is pressed and when right arrow is released. Okay, so we're going to have these two blocks. So once you've got those two blocks in place, we now need to set what's known as velocity to our character. Okay, and velocity, of course, is things like speed. Okay, so in this instance, what velocity is going to do is it's going to program our character to move in a certain direction. Okay, so to do that, we can go to the physics tab, which is on the left, and scroll down until you see a button, until you see a block called set velocity x 0. So I'd like you to drag that in, and again duplicate it so that you've got one on the other side as well. Okay, so that you've got set velocity x 0 on both sides. Now, if the velocity is set to 0, it means that the character isn't going to move. Now, that's fine with when right arrow is released, because of course when the right arrow is released, we don't actually want our character to keep on moving, because that would just be silly. So what we need to do is we need to leave set velocity x 0 for when the right arrow is released. But when the right arrow is pressed, we of course need the character to move. Now, it's up to you what value you put into set the velocity to. I'm going to set mine to 200. Okay, but the faster that you the higher the number that you put in, essentially, the faster that your character's going to move. Okay, when you press the right arrow. But 200 is a nice sort of, it's not too fast and it's not too slow. But like I said, it's up to you what speed you put in. Now, what we need to do, okay, is we need to set our character to play a certain animation. So you might remember in Scratch, when you're programming in Scratch, you can do things like switch costumes and things like that to make your character look like, or your sprite look like your character is walking. Okay. What we're going to do here is GameFruit have actually designed the animations for us so that we don't have to kind of program them in ourselves. Okay. You could, in future, if you wanted to, look at programming your own character, okay? But for the time being, what we're going to do is we're just going to set our own, set in the animations which GameFruit have already pre-designed for us, okay? So to do that, we're going to go to Animation on the left, and you'll see that there's a block called Play Animation Idle. And I'd like you to drag that in to both of the blocks. Okay, so when right arrow is pressed and when right arrow is released should contain these animations. Now, idle, okay, play animation idle means that when the button isn't pressed, okay, when the right arrow is released, the character is just going to stand still. Okay. Now we of course want our character to look like he's moving when the buttons are being pressed. Okay, so In the block when right arrow is pressed, what we need to do is in that block that says play animation idle, we want to swap out idle for the word run, okay? And what that's going to do is when our character is moving, when the right arrow is pressed, the character, he's just going to simply run. He's going to look like he's running, okay? And by keeping play animation idle on the right, what that's going to do is it's actually going to mean that as soon as the right arrow key is released, our character, he's just going to stand still. He's not going to look like he's moving, okay? So play animation run, he'll look like he's running when the button is pressed. Play animation idle, he'll just stand still when the button is released, okay? So the last thing that we need to do is we need to get our character to look like he's facing in the right direction that he's walking in. Because otherwise, let's just say when you're pressing the left arrow key, if you're pressing the left arrow key, the character might start moving backwards, okay? So he might start walking in the opposite direction, but he'll still be facing forwards. So what we need to do is set a block which will flip the character's image around so that in whatever direction he's walking in, that will be the direction that he's facing, okay? We only need to do this on the when right arrow is pressed button, because when you release the arrow key, the character will remain facing in that direction. So what we need to do is we only need to set a block for when the character is when the button is being pressed. Okay, so in this transform menu on the left, you'll see a tab called Set X Scale of Myself to 1. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is drag that in and just add it to when right arrow is pressed. So that way now, what that means is that when the right arrow key is pressed, the character will look like he's facing forwards, okay? And what you need to do in a second is when you're programming the left arrow key, you need to change something so that when the left arrow key is pressed, it will look like he's facing the opposite way, okay? But I'm going to leave you to figure that out. So before I let you try and program the rest of the character yourself, okay, using for the left arrow and for the up arrow, I'd like you to just test what you've done so far. So what you need to do is click on this play button in the top right, and what that's going to do, it's going to ask you if you'd like to save your script. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call mine character, okay? And what that's going to do is just going to call this script character so that if we wanted to use it again in the future, it's actually now saved as a script. If you hit save, okay, it should then boot into the game that you've just developed, okay? And you will see that if you hold down the right arrow key, your character is going to move in the right direction. But obviously we haven't yet programmed the up arrow or the left arrow. So if you click on close, your task now is to try and figure out how to program the character to move to the left and how to program the character to move up, okay? So I'll give you a couple of minutes to figure that one out, and then once you think you've done it, post some screenshots of what you've done in the Discord, okay? And we'll have a look and see what you've done, and we'll let you know if you're getting it. If you've got it right, okay? So I'll let you figure that out now for a few minutes, and then we'll carry on from there. If you have any questions, remember to just join into the TechnoClub voice channel. Andrew, Joe, and I are all on there if you need any help. And also, if you don't want to go on the voice channel, that's absolutely fine. Just post a question up in the Discord chat, and we'll be able to help you with it.
Smooth jazz when we're paused like this.
Thank you, Joe. That'd be great.
I can't do it. You're the one streaming.
Oh, really? How do I do that?
You just play a YouTube video or something.
Oh, good idea. Okay. That would involve, though, Joe, having to click off of the screen because I'm streaming from my Mac, so I can only show one screen at a time, and I can't move off of it.
Have you not got it on window capture? Have you got it on full desktop capture?
I think I've got it to display capture.
Yeah, never mind.
But we can do that next time. Is the stream keeping up okay, Joe? Is it?
Yeah, it looks like
Yeah,
it.
cool. That's fine. I'm impressed at my broadbander. Okay, how's everybody doing? Everyone doing all right? Let's have a look. Does walking left count if the character teleports? Okay. So there sometimes you might find that the character does tend to jump if you press on the left arrow key a bit further than what they would normally. It is something that can kind of happen. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. It's just like a strange bug with Game Fruit sometimes. I found that I've been making some games in the past and pressing the left key is absolutely fine, no problems at all. And then on other occasions, the character does jump. Sadly, I think it's just a bug that they're working on because it does seem to only happen on occasion. So keep trying it. So it might fix itself. It's just a little bit strange. Rhys, do you want to post a screenshot of your script in the chat, and then we'll take a look to see what you're doing, so we can see how it's what we can do to try and fix it. Yeah, so don't worry if your character is a little bit jumpy when you press the left arrow. That's absolutely fine. It just does occasionally happen. Let's see. Okay, so Alex, let's have a look at yours. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Well done. This. Okay. Okay, so you're really, really close for this. Okay, have a look at your velocity for when the up arrow is. Let's have a look. So when your up arrow is pressed. Okay, have a look at when your up arrow is pressed. Have a look at. Do you think we need the set scale x or set x scale of myself to 1? Because your character should be facing in the right direction anyway. So have a think about that. But I think you pretty much got it. That's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty much spot on. Well done. And Alex, you're there as well. That's really, really good. You just need to add in your up arrow now, and then you're there. So I'll give you a couple more minutes just to kind of finish that off, and then I'll give you the solution so that we can start working through that. You might have noticed as well, if you've tested your script, that if you've added in the up arrow function, you might have noticed that when you press the up arrow, your character doesn't yet come back down. So what we're going to do in a second is we're going to actually add in some gravity so that when the character comes back down, so that the character will actually come back down again after you've started the game. Okay, cheers. That's okay. So where you've put in your when up arrow is released, change your play animation to idle. So that way, when you release the up arrow, he should, or your character should, just come out of that secondary jump costume, and it'll just put you back into the idle position, so it doesn't look like he's jumping. Try that, and then we'll take it from there. Also, for this, have a look at your velocity. There is I think I can understand why your up arrow isn't working, and I'll explain the solution in a second when we add gravity. And I'll take you through why. But you're really, really, really close. So we'll go through that now. Okay. So, Chris and Alex, you both got it really, really, really close, if not pretty much spot on. So what I'm going to do is I'll just go through. I'll just quickly add in my left arrow. Actions. Okay. So I'll just pop those in. So I've got a when backspace / delete. So I'm going to change that to. That looks really good, Alex. So we'll program what happens when to get the character to come back down in a second. So I'm going to add in my left arrows, which is correct, and going to have my release section, and then I'm going to set my velocity of x to minus 200 for when my character goes left. And I'm also going to add in my animations like that. and as you've both done, I'm going to set the X scale position of myself to -1 for when the button is pressed. Okay, so well done, you both got that one right. So what we're going to do now is I'll show you the up arrow. Okay, so the up arrow is a bit trickier, but I think you've both managed to figure out the difference. So we're going to have 2 more of the when button is pressed blocks. Well done, please. If you've got the up arrow working, that's great. So when the up arrow is pressed and when the up arrow is released, we're going to set the velocity, of course, along the Y axis this time, not the X axis, because it's for up and down instead of left and right. So, well, that's pretty good. There we go. So, what I'm going to... So, with gravity in Game Fruit, when we set gravity, as you'll see in a second, the lower the number that you set for your gravity, the more like the moon your game's going to become. Okay, so what that means is that if you have a higher number for your gravity, the less high your character is going to be able to jump. Whereas if it's a lower number for gravity, it means you've got something very similar to the moon, where you could jump really, really high and it takes really long time to come back down. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set -500 as my velocity for Y. Now, it's absolutely up to you what numbers you put in here, okay? But it does have to be a negative number so that it can combat the force of the gravity, okay? And as you've both done, I'm going to pop in the animations for jump. And I'm also going to do one for when the up arrow is released, so that I've got idle. Okay, so that's pretty much that. So that is the solution for programming the characters, and you've both done really, really well with that. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to program the gravity. Okay, so the gravity section. If you go to the events button again, you're actually able to drag in a block for when the level starts, okay? And so when the level starts, from the get-go, as soon as the level loads in, we want this certain thing to happen, okay? So when the level starts, we're going to go to physics, and we're going to go to this block here under the gravity menu, which is set gravity x0, and we're going to drag that in. Now, obviously, we don't want gravity x to be set to... We don't want to be thinking about gravity of x, because that would be left and right. That would be the horizontal axis of the game. So what we want to do is we want to set the gravity to y, okay? Now, with mine, I'm going to set my gravity to 800. Now, 800 is pretty much similar to just... In this instance, in the terms of Game Fruit, it would just be kind of like normal, okay? That would be, I think, the best way of putting it, is that it's just like normal gravity. But if I was to put a higher number, like maybe 1000 or 1500, you'll find that your character can jump a lot less high and falls a lot quicker. So what we need to do is set the gravity of Y, in this case I'm going to say 800, and we also need to say that your character is able to react to gravity. So what that means is we need to go to the physics section again and scroll down until we get to the miscellaneous menu, and you'll see that there's a block for set reacts to gravity true. That block will basically say, really quite simply, that your character is able to react to gravity in the game and will fall back down when you release the up arrow. So if you hit the play button now, you should be able to see that when you press jump, your character falls back down, and when you move left and right, your character will move across the screen. So you'll probably see that when I press the left arrow, the character does become a bit jumpy. But like I said, it only happens sometimes. Unfortunately, I think it's just something that Game Fruit are working on at the moment, hopefully. Okay, so after you've done that, we'll move on just quickly to how we'll get the character to actually have the camera follow them. Because you might have noticed if you tried to move through your level just then, that the camera wasn't actually following you as the character. It was just fixed in one place. So this is really, really easy to program. Okay, all we need to do is go to events and use this block called constantly. Now, constantly is you've probably seen something similar in Scratch. It's like a forever block in Scratch. So it uses something known as looping, and we use looping in programming all the time. Okay, it's something that you do sort of all the time in programming. And the idea behind looping is that it lets you, or it tells the computer to do something over and over and over again. Okay, and it won't stop unless a certain condition has been met. So it might be something along the lines of, let's say that a certain variable reaches a certain number, or a certain variable is greater than or less than a certain number. Okay, it's about making sure that the computer will repeat something until it's told that it no longer needs to do so. So we're going to use this constantly block, which is basically the same thing as a forever loop in Scratch. And we're going to go to the looks bar on the left, and we're going to go to camera, and in there should be a block under camera lock called center camera on myself. All you need to do is pop that in there, and all that's going to do now is your character will be able to have the camera follow it throughout the entire game. So if I hit the play button, you'll see that once the game loads, the camera will now actually follow your character as it moves through the game and won't be fixed in one spot on the game. Okay? So that is how we get the camera to stay fixed in one place. So let's see. Yeah, Biscuit Boy, from what I can see, your code does look quite good. The only thing I think you need to change is when the up arrow is pressed, you don't need to set the scale of myself to 1. Because, like I said, your character is going to be constantly facing in the same direction when you press the jump arrow, because they'll already be facing in a certain direction when you press jump. So that's the only thing I think you need to change from your code in terms of the character controls. Other than that, it looks really, really good. Well done. I'll just zoom out my code a little bit just so that you can see everything that's going on. And then we'll carry on in just a second. I'll just let everybody catch up, and then we'll carry on. So you've probably seen that this is really, really similar to Scratch. Uses a block-based programming, as I'm sure you've seen. And it's sort of quite nice and sort of easy to learn and things like that. So it should be easy if you wanted to sort of play around with it yourself. You can do. Can you stop yourself from jumping in midair? That's a good question, actually, Alex. I'm not sure. The best way I think that we could probably do that is by possibly increasing the strength of the gravity, so that way the character falls a lot quicker. That could be one way of doing it, but it is worth a sort of we could have a quick play around with it and see what happens. But that is a good question, actually. Yeah, I see what you mean. Andrew or Joe, have you got any thoughts on any ways that we can stop the character from jumping in midair?
Could you tell it to wait until it's landed? Like a pause in the command?
You could do. Yeah, you could do. That's a good idea.
My headset had muted itself. I'm just having a look. I'm just having a Google around. I can't see anything immediately.
No, it's a good question, actually. Just having a look through some of these blocks to see if there's anything that could do it.
No, I can't find anything specific.
No. Okay, well, in that case, if you have a play around with it during the week, and you come across something, by all means post a solution in the chat. I'll try and have a look for a solution during the week as well, and if I manage to find anything, I'll let you all know. I'll put up a screenshot of some code in the chat so that you can sort of see what the solution would be. But that is a really good question, and I will get back to you if I can on how to fix that. It's certainly an interesting one. So for now, that will kind of conclude like the character set, the character controls. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to move on into programming obstacles into the game. Okay, so obstacles are, in this case, things that when we hit them, okay, they're actually going to take us back to the start of the level again. So kind of like how if you were sort of in last week's session, you could set things like piranha plants and different objects into the game that when you touch them, you would restart at the start of the level again. So what we're going to do this week now is we're actually going to program our own objects, our own obstacles, into the game so that when we touch them, our character will sort of lose all of its health and you'll have to start the level again. So let's have a look, Alex. So could you maybe do an if block so that you only jump when touching floor? Absolutely. Yeah, you could probably do that. That would be a really good idea. That would be definitely something that you could try out. Absolutely. So you could try and do, there's bound to be some sort of if block. I'm just having a quick look through mine now, just in case there is something else that we could try. But that would definitely be one potential solution for when you don't let that the up arrow be pressed until you hit the floor. That should be something that we can try, definitely. If you do find something, do let us know, because I think we're all intrigued as well. So, in the meantime, what we'll do is I'll go through the process of programming our own object into the game. So make sure that when you what we need to do is close this script. Make sure when you close the script that you do save it, because it does mean that you could then use it later on, okay? So we're going to save this script, and we're going to click on to the objects layer that we created at the start so that we can actually place objects into our game. And you'll notice in the media tab on the left of the screen there are actually two obstacles. Okay, there's an obstacles section. What I'd like you to do is choose one, doesn't matter which one. I'm going to choose the spikes, and I'm just going to place them at random points throughout my game. Okay, so like I said, it doesn't matter which one of the two that you choose, just as long as you've got a few in there that will let you that you could potentially hit to sort of start the level again. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to associate a script with those now. So we're going to build another script. So we're going to right click on it and we're going to say add script. And it's only going to be it's a really, really tiny script, this one, okay? It's only 3 blocks. There are 2 ways that you can program it, okay? So I will go through both for you, okay? We're going to go through the events menu again, and we're going to use that when created block so that as soon as the game loads and as soon as the game has fully loaded in all of the assets, it's going to start this script. Now, we have a choice here of 2 different blocks that we can use, okay? If button press block that you can put here. Not from what I've seen, Alex, hang on. So you could go to control flow. Let's have a look. There is a block, Alex, in events under keyboard that's key, but then I don't know if that one would that might not actually fit in with the if statement. Oh, it might do. If you go to events, Alex, under the keyboard title, there's a button that says key backspace delete pressed. I'll put it on my screen for you now so that you can see it. That key might that block might actually do it. If you wanted to try that one out, that might do it. I'll leave it down there so that you can see it. Okay, so when we're creating our objects, we need to be able to tell the computer that when you set an object that it can't move, because otherwise, if you load in the game and you touch that object, all that's going to happen is it's going to slide across the screen like you've pushed it. So what we need to do is we actually need to tell the computer to not move the object when it is loaded into the game. So we can do that by going to physics and scrolling down until we see a block called set immovable. Now you can either use set immovable, okay, and set it to true, or the alternative block that you could use if you wanted to is set moves and change set moves to false. So you can use either one of these blocks. It doesn't matter which one that you use. They both do pretty much the same thing. Set immovable true will mean that if you try and move, if it just basically it can't move. Set moves false will again just stop it from moving. It is entirely up to you which one you use. For now, I'm going to stick to using set immovable true, just so that we know that just basically it's not going to move. What we need to do then is add a tag. So if you go to the sensing bar, okay, you will see a menu called tagging. And what we need to do is use the block add tag name on myself. And what that's going to do is it's just going to add a tag to the object. And the tag it's kind of like it's a piece of code that tells the computer what it is, what that specific object is in the game, and then it will know based off of that tag name what you need to do, what it needs to do with it. So in this case, our tag name is going to be called obstacle, and so that way the computer will know that once you hit that specific object in the game, it's just going to know that it's an obstacle, and it will stop you from and it will, make you lose all your health and start the level again. Oh, I can see that you've done it, Alex. Well done. That's fantastic. That's really, really good work. So when up arrow is pressed, if touching bottom, then bottom side, then start, then play the animation and do the jump. Okay, good. That's really nice work. Well done. Well done.
I was looking for that when touching bottom. That's what I was thinking as well.
That's really great work.
That's touching the floor, or woman. Don't jump.
Okay. That's good. Well done. Okay. So once you've got that obstacle, created, all you need to do is close it, save it, and call your script something like obstacle, okay? Because you're going to be reusing that script now throughout all of your objects, because you'll notice if you hover over one of the objects with your mouse, you'll see now that what was a blank jigsaw piece has now become yellow, or it might be a different color on your screen, which means that object now has a script associated with it, okay? But we need to be able to set that obstacle script that we've just created onto all of our objects, because at the moment it's only associated with one of them. So to do that, it's really, really straightforward. You just go to the Code tab at the top of that menu on the left, and you scroll down until you see your scripts that you've created, which will usually be displayed at the bottom. If you click on the one that we've just created, which is obstacle, you can then associate that with the other obstacles that you've placed into your game. Okay? So I'll let everyone spend a little bit of time catching up with that, and then we'll carry on in a second. But well done, Alex, on figuring that out. That's really, really good work. So you'll see that if you test your game out now, as soon as you touch that obstacle, it's at the moment not doing anything. And you'll see why that is in a second. But what you will see is that if you run into your obstacle, you can't actually move it. Okay? But you will see in a second why our character doesn't lose all of its health and why the level doesn't restart when we land on it. Okay? Okay, is everybody happy to move on? Okay, so Caleb, the tag name, I should have explained that actually, sorry, that was my fault. The tag name, in order for the computer to understand what the tag is, it has to be called obstacle. Sorry, that was my fault, I should have explained that earlier. So what Game Fruit have done is they've actually produced a whole bunch of different kind of pre-programmed assets for us to make use of, and the tag name obstacle is one of those pre-programmed assets. So it will understand, the computer will understand that when you add the tag name of obstacle to something, that is something that is acting as the name suggests, an obstacle. But unfortunately, you can't add. Yeah, sorry, that was my fault. I should have explained that sooner earlier. It has to be something that the computer can kind of understand what it's doing. But that was my fault. Sorry. That's fine. You can call the script whatever you like. That's okay. Okay, so what we're actually going to do now is we need to tell our character, okay, so our little character, we need to program our character so that when we are playing the game, that it understands that the obstacle is an actual obstacle. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to edit the script for the character again. So we're going to go back into that script editor, and we're going to use a new item from the physics block, which is called when I am touched, get toucher. Okay, and I'll explain what this does in just a second. Okay, so the idea behind this block is it will ensure that when the character is moving through the game, when it contacts, in this instance, an obstacle, the character will know, that item's an obstacle, the character's touching an obstacle, and it will tell the game exactly what it needs to do to the character when it comes into contact with that specific obstacle in the game. Okay, so we're going to go to begin with, the control flow menu, and we're going to be using an if statement. And an if statement, as I'm sure you've all seen in the past, is something that we use really often in programming. I'm sure by now you all know what it does, but for those of you who don't, an if statement is a bit of code that we can use that tells the computer if a certain condition is met, then execute a certain bit of code. Okay, so a certain condition has to be met in order for the code to run. Okay, and what we're going to use again is that tag name block that we used before. Okay, but we're going to use a slightly different one. We're going to use the myself has tag name block, which you'll probably be able to see in the sensing menu on the left, and we're going to drag that into there. Now, we don't actually want the game to recognize when myself has a certain tag name. What we want to do is have the game recognize when the character is touching, or when it's come into contact with a certain obstacle, that it executes this specific bit of script. Okay, so to begin with, we're going to change the tag name to obstacle. So like before, it associates the game with anything that has got the tag of obstacle. And we're going to swap out this myself jigsaw piece here. So we're going to throw that away. And we're actually going to use a variable. And you'll find that in the variables section. And it's a variable called instance toucher. Okay, so instance toucher is a variable that GameThrough has created for us, which states that if you touch the object with this specific tag name, a certain piece of code is going to execute. And the bit of code that's going to execute is this top one in control flow here, which is go to next level. Now obviously in this case we don't want to go to the next level, so we can swap that out with current level. So all this bit of code here is going to do is it's going to say, as soon as you touch something that has the tag name of obstacle, it's going to set your character back to the start of the current level. Okay, and we can test that by clicking on the play button. And you'll see as soon as I touch the spikes, it sets me back to the start of the level again. Okay, so lots of you might already know what a variable is, okay? But a variable, for those of you who don't know what a variable is, it's a slot of memory in the computer, okay, that will store a particular item. Now we can use that particular, we can change the contents of a variable. We can, it can hold things like text, it can hold numbers. It's just a slot of memory on the computer that you can assign a name to that's going to hold a particular value. Okay, and we use these all the time in programming. You probably come across them in Scratch. They're really, really important aspects of programming. Okay, they're really, really, really important that you use those. Okay, so that is actually the end of the section on the character controls for this week. So there's one last thing that we're actually going to cover. Is there anybody who would like me to wait a little bit so that you can catch up, or is anybody good to go? If you'd like me to wait a bit longer, just put it up in the chat, and I'll wait if I'm going too fast. Okay, in that case, we will carry on with programming our background. So we're going to close down the character script again, and we're going to go over to our background layer. And what we need to do is we need to program in a background to our game, so that way when our character is in the game, the background follows the character as it moves through the game. Because at the moment, if you were to scroll down to the background section in the media tab on the left and choose one of the backgrounds, all that background would do at that point is just stay fixed in one place, and it would move and disappear as soon as you move away from it. And it would also assume that that background is an object in the game that has physics, which means that if you were to you were to move above it or below it in the game, you would actually be able to walk along it like it's a platform, and obviously we don't want to be doing that. So what we can do is we can add our own background. Okay, so it's up to you which background you choose. I'm going to choose this one, and I'm just going to drag it so that it's in the top left-hand corner of my screen. Okay, so that it's just up there like that. Now, like I said earlier, it's important that you're on your background layer so that you can make sure that your background doesn't get tied in with the floor assets or with anything else. Okay, it just needs to be on its own layer as the background. Okay, so right click on the background, and we're going to add a new script, and this script is also really, really short, and it's really, really easy to program in. Okay, so we're going to once again get an event block, and this one is going to be a when created. So once again, as soon as the level starts up and the level is loaded in, this bit of code is going to execute. And we're going to go to our physics menu, and we're actually going to find a block called set physics enabled true. Okay. However, we of course don't want our physics to be true, because that would mean that background is going to act like it's its own sort of moving platform, and we obviously don't want that to be the case. Okay, so what we want to do is we actually want to have our physics set to false, so that the background isn't an object in itself, it's just a separate layer. And we're going to use another one of these constantly loops again from the event section, so that we can have our game constantly running this bit of code. And what this bit of code that we're going to program in does now is it allows for the background to follow the character as the character moves through the game, so that the background is always displayed. Because if the background isn't always displayed in the game, all that's going to happen is as soon as you go beyond the size of the background, you're just going to end up with a white screen, which is going to look a little bit boring as your background. So we're actually going to be using some transform blocks, okay? And we're going to be using the one that's labeled as set X position of myself to 0. And we're going to need 2 of these. And the reason that we're going to need 2 of these is because we're going to need one that's associated with the x-axis so that it will move across the screen left and right. And obviously we need one for the y-axis so that it moves up and down as your character follows through the game. So set x position of myself to 0, set y position of myself to 0. These are the 2 blocks that we need in order to make sure that our character is going to, that the background, sorry, is going to actually follow our character. What we do need to do though is we need to drag out these 0 blocks, and we actually need to use a special type of block which is going to have our character's camera follow the background, or have the background follow our character's camera. And these can be found in the Looks tab. And if you scroll down, you'll see that there are 2, that there's a block here called Camera X. Okay. Now once again, we need 2 of these, one for Camera X and one for Camera Y. And what this bit of code is going to essentially do, like I said, is it's going to have your character follow the have the background, follow your character throughout the game so that the background is always displayed. If we click on play and call the script something like background, you call it something like background image, okay, and hit save, you'll find that as your character moves through the game, the background stays fixed in one place. I mean, I've just fallen off, so that's no good. But your character, as you can see, the background actually follows you through the game. So once you've done that, that is all of the programming things that we're going to cover today. So what I'd like you to do now is spend a bit of time having a play about with the different assets, okay, and the different things and the bits and pieces that you can do on GameFruit, and start building up a bit of a level based on what we've just done. And then Joe and Andrew and I will be in the chat and on the voice channel if you need help with anything. But we'd like to see sort of like what sort of things that you can now build now that you've got some of the sort of like basic concepts of GameFruit covered. If you want to try out different things, you can do. It's entirely up to you. One thing that we will try maybe in a second is looking at the HUD if we've got enough time, and programming in our own HUD. That is something that I'd like you to try doing, however, without help, to see what sort of thing that you can achieve with that. So spend a little bit of time trying to mess about with GameFruit a bit, trying to add on, you know, maybe expanding your map a little bit, maybe adding different objects to the game, and try programming in your own HUD. If you don't remember how to program in your own HUD, that's okay, but it's worth giving it a try. So I'm going to spend a bit of time adding to my game now as well. So in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the session, so you'll have around quarter of an hour to sort of add to your level and sort of play around with it. What I'd like you to do is actually download a copy of your game and actually load it into our Discord server, so that way we can all kind of have a play around with the games and things like that. All you need to do that is go to File, Export Game, and then save a copy of it to your local drive, and then just do Import Game to upload a copy of your game to GameFruit. If you do have an online account, you can actually just share a copy of the game as well, rather than doing import and export. And you can just share us a link of to your game in the Discord chat, and we can play around with that as well. So have a play around now for another quarter of an hour, and then last 15 minutes of the session, what we'll do is we will see what sort of levels you've come up with, and make sure that you ask if you have any questions. If you're stuck on anything, just let us know and we'll help you out as best we can. So, Alex, yeah, so the spikes, what should be happening with the spikes is as soon as you touch them, it should just sort of teleport you back to the start of the level again. So they're actually acting sort of more like teleporters. So if you're landing on them, does it not take you back to the start of the level? You're welcome to put a screenshot, Alex, of your code up in the chat, and I'll have a look to see how we can fix it. Yeah, it is. That's a good idea. Go for it. Just have a bit of a play around with GameFruit now for a bit and see what sort of things you can add. Oh, right, okay. I can see what you mean now, Alex. Okay. Bring up the script for the spikes so we can have a look. Okay. And Okay, and can I see the script for your character as well? Because I might have an idea as to why it's not working. Okay, yeah. So, do you see, Alex, in your spikes script, do you see how obstacle has been spelt with a capital O? Change that to a lowercase o and then try it and see if that works. And Chris, I'll have a go on your game now as well. How's it going, Alex? Have you managed to... has it started working yet? Nice, perfect. Yeah, it's something you'll probably find quite often in programming is stuff has to be you have to things have to match up, and it's really stuff like that happens all the time. Don't worry, it's something that happens to the best of us. Right, I'm just having a play around on your game now, Chris. Sneaky putting those spikes there right at the bottom. Nearly got me. It's really good, Chris. Well done. That was really great work. And that's I love the hairstyle of your custom character as well.
How can you see what animations a character has?
That is a good question, Andrew.
Playing Chris's game when he's got a set animation to run and jump.
But it's not actually running and jumping.
There's no animations linked to
that. That is a good question. I will have a look. It's a really cool hairstyle. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure, Andrew, actually.
The way to do it is if you scroll down on the left
to
create animation.
Create animation. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's...
Inside create animation, you have your sprite library where you've actually got animation.
Yeah. So there are certain...
animation.
Yeah, so there are certain characters in the game that have got animations already programmed to them. But if you wanted to make your own custom character have its own animation, if you scroll down to the bottom of the menu on the left, you should be able to see a button called Create Animation, and you can then actually create your own animation for your character, give it a name, and then when you add a script to your designed character, you'll then be able to sort of like make it do different. Well, you can associate it with the animation that you've created in a way. So the ones that have already been put into the game, you'll probably notice that if you hover over the little blue circle with a white square that's next to them under the players section, it does say has an animation. So if you want to add an animation to your own custom character, that's absolutely fine. Have a go, definitely. It'd be really cool to see what you come up with. You could even program them to crawl if you wanted to. That's something else that you could definitely do if you wanted to.
Another way, if you right click on the character, you can do view animation.
Oh, okay, cool.
Rather than having to create an animation. I think that shows you the animations for that specific character.
Yeah. That it does.
So I think, Chris, for your game, what you'd want to do is where you've got animation to run, you'd want to have a look in your animation editor to see what animations that character actually has. So it does have one for walking, so you could use walking rather than jump, and you've got jump up and jump down, and they would be the labels you would use in this game. If that makes sense.
Yep, it does. I've just tried it out now, and it does work absolutely fine. Except I did fall into the death pit this. That's a really good game, Chris. Well done. So make sure that you save a copy of that either to an online account if you've got one, or to your PC, so that you're able to carry on adding to it next week. Or if you want to carry on adding to it throughout the week, that's absolutely fine as well. You know, you're welcome to post things in the Discord throughout the week if you'd like us to try something or play about with something, you know, try and help you fix a problem. Just post things in Discord and we'll try and get back to you as quickly as we can. So I'm just trying out yours now, Biscuit Boy. Let's see.
Chris, does that make sense how this works now? So you've got your animations in your animation editor, and you call those labels there in your script to make them animate in the level.
That's really, really good work, Biscuit Boy. I really like it. I like how you've added a script as well for moving on to the next level at the end. That's really, really great work. Have you thought about maybe trying to program in a HUD so that you can see what, so that you could maybe put some coin collecting items throughout the game? You could do that if you want to. That's one thing that you could definitely look at.
Dan.
Yes, Andrew.
Why is it when they switch from moving left and right, the character
jumps? So, I was sort of saying, like at the start, that is something that I found is a little bit hit and miss. I think it's something that it's just a bug, unfortunately. I found that I've been making some games recently and it's not happened, and then with some games it does happen. I'm not sure why, because the code is fine. It's just a strange glitch, I think, which I'm hoping that they can work on, like patching out. In terms of your,
if you try Biscuit Boy's game again, move slightly right first, move left, and then move right.
Okay, I will. Alex, to answer your question just quickly first, I think the best thing that you can do for getting the character to swim through water, you would probably, it would be good if you could do an animation to begin with that would make it look like the character would swim through water. In terms of that, I'm just trying to have a think of what the best way of doing that would be. You could... There might be a way of doing it so that way you could make the water kind of harder to swim through. I'm trying to think of a way of doing that. I'll try and get back to you on that. Right, let me just have a look at Biscuit Boy's game.
So when you land, move ever slightly, and then move left.
Okay. It's just loading in. Won't be a second.
I'm going to put a screenshot in the chat so you can see what happens.
Okay, so what did you want me to do, did you say?
So move right ever so slightly.
Yeah. Move left.
Right.
Let me see. Oh, I see. I see what you mean, Andrew. Okay. So there could be a way of fixing it, but for the time being, I've not actually been able to find like a fix for it. It's just kind of been something that that seems to happen at like random points. I made some games yesterday and this morning, and there wasn't actually. I didn't actually find that there were any, like, there was no jumping at all. It just seems to be at like different points. It just doesn't. It just seems to jump a little bit.
So it's not even the velocity; it's when it turns.
It's when the character turns. Yeah.
Yeah. put that to I thought something a bit different. So if you put the velocity as plus 200 for both left and right,
Yeah.
when you use the left arrow key, there's just a massive jump between where the characters start.
Yeah. So.
But the problem is, basically, well, you can through the level anyway, regardless of where you start.
Yeah, I'm just having a look to see if there's anything that we could maybe change. It seemed to me, though, that it really is sort of haphazard and random, because I made a game yesterday using identical settings and there was no jumping at all. It just seems to be at like strange and sort of random points. It just decides that it wants to kind of do like jumping.
I think it's to do with the scale.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do it. I put the scale back in, and it does it straight away.
Alex M, that is definitely a potential solution that you could put in for now. Biscuit Boy, let's see what your new game does. Okay, let's see. Okay, I see what you've done, Biscuit Boy. So you've just pushed the wall further back, so that way there is no way of clipping through. That's a good idea. It's a good idea for a fix for now. It would be nice if it didn't do the.
It still has that problem throughout the level, and it's still a problem anyway. It's not a way you want to play the game.
No, I agree.
It's something to do with the scale. Is there another way to make the player face the other way?
We could try a different transform block. There could be a. We could use something like. Wonder if set rotation. Yeah, set rotation. Try that one. I'm giving it a go. You could do that as well, Alex. Absolutely, that's something that you could try.
Rotation definitely didn't work.
Didn't work.
Oh, yeah, probably not.
Yes, Andrew, I can see what you mean. That's I'm not sure if people can see on the stream what it's doing, but it is definitely not good. So set rotation doesn't work.
I'll have a look through the pre-built script to see if I can see what they did.
Okay, sure. This to make the boss sense you. You're making a boss. Okay, so NPCs are something that we were going to cover in a couple of weeks. However, in the meantime, one thing that you could do, if you want to, Fierce, is there's actually, I think, a tutorial for it. If that was something that you'd like to kind of do in the meantime, I'm just trying to see if I can find it now on mine. Let me have a look. I will let you know now, just bear with me a second. Okay, so this, if you go to the tutorials button on the top of the screen, and then you go to its intermediate resources, Platformer Game 102, you can actually start programming in your AI. It's under step 2, smart enemies and obstacles. Have a look through that tutorial. That should be able to help you program in your own AI for for your boss battle. Okay, so we're coming up to like the last 5 minutes of today's session. Is there anything that anyone else would like to ask sort of in the meantime, that you think that anything that you might want help with for today? Is there anything that you would like to learn in Game Fruits? Because we're really happy to kind of tailor these sessions to learn sort of more about like what you would like to learn, because these sorts of sessions, you know, they're for you. So if you have any suggestions of things that you would like us to start implementing, post some messages in the chat. Like I said, the next couple of weeks, they're going to be sort of focused around building up games on Gamefruit. So we're going to start, like I said, looking at different features and things next week, and giving you time to kind of build on your game. But if anybody has any suggestions on sort of like what they would like us to cover, please put some, you know, suggestions up in Discord. And we'll definitely look into trying to get those sessions implemented in the future. Okay, how to make water. Okay, I'll make a note of that, Alex, to see if I can find out anything on that. That's quite a good suggestion, actually, Alex, because I'd imagine that there is definitely a solution on how to do that. So we'll definitely look into that for you.
Dan,
Yes, Andrew.
where do you get the current player location again?
Current player location for. Hang on. For what was that exactly, Andrew? So that you could
move the player to a specific location in a way.
Move the player to a specific location. So when I had this whole touching an obstacle thing, if you go to control flow, there's a go to block at the top.
Okay.
You can use that to kind of go to a different part of the level or to a different level. That was the only one that we've used so far.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could use, like, when you got the set X scale to myself to 1.
Yeah.
You change the position.
Okay. Yeah, because there is a transform block for position, isn't there? Yeah, that could be something that would work. There are some location blocks under transform, Andrew. I haven't had too much of a play around with those just yet, but yeah, it is a strange bug, that. Okay, so I think that's going to wrap everything up for this week. So if anybody has any questions or if there's anything else that you think afterwards that you want to ask, please remember that you can just post it in Discord and we'll try and sort of get back to you as soon as we can. Next week's session, like I said earlier, is actually going to be a continuation of Game Fruit. So make sure that you save your games to either download a copy through exporting it or save it to your online account if you've got a Game Fruit account, so that we're able to pick up where we left off next week. But until then, though, thank you sort of very much for kind of joining in today. I hope you kind of enjoyed it. And I'll speak to you all and see you all next week in the next online session. Have a good week. Joe, am I good to stop the stream?
If you finish, Dan, you can stop the stream.
Okay. I shall stop the stream. Thanks, everybody.